If a man has these three traits, you should think about marrying him. I love this because usually there are so many things that we desire in a partner as a woman. And this really hones in on not only the three traits that are truly necessary for long-term happiness, there's research to back it up. I want to get to these three traits that I want you to be thinking about not only in a partner, but are you bringing these three traits to your relationship as well in your attempt to get the relationship you desire and deserve? So, who am I to talk about this? If you don't know me and your first time here, I'm Coach Paula Grooms, a dating and relationship coach for women, licensed social worker, and author of the book, Why Won't He Commit? How a Man Decides to Make You the One. I coach you to find a Mr. Right, get an ex back, or grow an existing relationship with a man you truly desire so you create the relationship of your dreams and level up to the complete commitment you totally deserve. So I'm going to play Dr. Shanna Curry, her discussion with Chris Williamson that breaks it down in a really wonderful way. These three main things that are predictors of long-term happiness. And we can, in our dating experience, look at all the bells and whistles and different things about him and not think down the road and what is going to be the core that's really going to get us long-term fulfillment, commitment, happiness, all of it. See, we as women tend to have big lists of a lot of things. Men don't tend to have those things. And what I'm going to show you, which I think is so spot on about the three things and why, if you find that man with these qualities, you want a long-term relationship that is going to be fulfilling, stable, somewhat easy. These are the three things to look for. And it's a really interesting discussion between Chris Williamson and Shanna Curry. Take a listen.
There are no solutions, only trade-offs.
There are only trade-offs. And although I do believe that Tai Tashiro, a psychologist and researcher, came up or really identified three key qualities that can make it easier. So if a person has these three key qualities, really this sets the groundwork for having an easier time managing these set of problems, because there's so much good there to make up for it. And those things aren't necessarily what we usually shoot for. They're more solid. And it makes sense. If you're trying to be with somebody for years and years, and you're going to be living with them every day and all of their idiosyncrasies. Can you say that word for me?
Idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies.
I think so.
It's one extra syllable I keep putting in there. So idiosyncrasies, essentially, you want somebody who's solid and who is consistently reminding you of what a decent, wonderful human being they are, so that those idiosyncrasies fall away and aren't the central focus. Whereas if somebody is really cool or good looking or kind of witty, that might help a little bit. But if they are self-absorbed or unkind, then whatever other issues you trade it off for are going to be really glaring and staring at you in the face.
Dig into that a little bit more for me. What did he find?
So Tai Tashiro, he actually he realized that people who stayed together, for the most part, the large proportion of them are chronically unhappy. And there's a small minority who are actually, they stay married long-term and they report a high level of satisfaction, not only in their partnership, but in their sex lives. And it can actually increase with age. And so out of that small minority, he wanted to know, are there any correlates? Are there any qualities? He looked at personality, he looked at race, he looked at age, he looked at all sorts of demographics of how they came together. And there were actually three core personality traits that he found represented more than others. And those were conscientiousness, number one, flexibility, number two, really low neuroticism is what we call it. So it's not a neurotic person. This person's pretty easygoing, flexible. And then the third is low to moderate adventurousness. And I always say to my clients on this, because I'm constantly personally advising my clients on this. This doesn't mean they don't want to hike or travel. Everybody likes to hike and travel. Or, I mean, I don't really like to hike, but everybody has some adventurousness in the traditional sense. But if you think those of us who are constantly looking at new shiny things, that's high adventurousness. And high adventurousness might mean that you are constantly starting new projects or running a business and you constantly have new ideas. It can also mean that you're constantly attracted to new exciting people. Doesn't mean you're going to cheat. It just means that you are somebody whose focus is constantly wandering, and it can be very difficult to get your focus and attention, which diminishes intimacy and connection at home. So you can understand why you'd actually want somebody who is really just easygoing, the rock. They focus on their family. They constantly understand what's important. They just are satisfied with a simpler life. And I am happy to say my husband is that way. You just need one person who has these qualities, by the way, because usually the incredibly conscientious, flexible, solid, grounded person is also much more tolerable and forgiving.
So, what do you think? I think it is so spot on. Conscientious, because that encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses responsibility, loyalty. A leader is conscientious, respectful. That's along the same lines. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and then the flexibility, because flexibility, as Dr. Shanna Curry said, is someone who is low in what we call neuroticism. People who are inflexible are very hard to live with day to day. And of course, all of this is all on a scale, but that also encompasses something. Flexibility typically encompasses an ability to compromise, which is huge in a long-term relationship, and then open to new experiences. And what she said there about adventurousness, this means openness. Again, it truly is, I think, on the spectrum of the flexibility. And as we get older, we tend to be more set with things. So I also like this because it speaks to what we can do, because, if you're here, I'm all about what are we doing? What's the work we're doing on ourselves to actually make the most we can of what we have to bring to a relationship? And it reminds me when she was talking about the person who is maybe more towards the looking at shiny things and thinking of new ideas and maybe not being present. That's something I work on for myself and have to remember. My partner is less along that line, thank goodness, because if both were that way, it would probably be too frenetic. But it's something I need to be thinking of. Am I bringing that to the table as well? So these things, as you can see, and research bears this out. They did a long-term study about what made people who were together very long-term relationships and marriages. And what initially brought the people together was not at all the reason that it worked out in the end. And typically things like their looks. At the end of the day, it wasn't even part of the equation. Now, we can all say, well, of course, for long-term marriages, people are older and, looks aren't going to be part of it. You're 80 years old, looks aren't going to be part of it. But wait a second. If they've been married for 50 years, that means they got together at 30. Okay. So looks were a part of it. Attraction is a part of it. We can become attracted to qualities. And how we do that is what we talk about here all the time. And what I work with my clients is overriding our programming, which actually is our experience of love and what we project onto the world. So if our programming is that we are not given the feeling that we are worthy, if we are shown that we are not worthy, what we can do is we're going to put that in our subconscious programming that we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. And we go out into the world. And because we have tried to prove our worth to our first love interest, which is our mother most specifically, if we don't get it back that we are worthy, we can look at shiny object things in a man that connotes worth and value, really good looks, athletic prowess, money. And while those things are all great, if they also come with these three things. So it doesn't mean that it's an absolute trade-off. The key, like she was saying, you just have to find one person with those things that you are attracted to. But the key for most is becoming attracted to those qualities. We, generally speaking, are attracted from a base, a programming that is what is lacking. And we talk about that all the time because it is the most important thing. We are relating from a place of lack and attempting to prove our worth. In other words, if we did not get the love, caring, attention, we were not reared by a primary caregiver who had those three qualities in spades, we won't necessarily be attracted to them. So if you're unfortunate enough to have a mother who was, say your mother was highly narcissistic, her needs came first, you were dismissed, you were secondary, your needs were not taken into account, they certainly weren't primary, you were left to your own devices a lot, stop complaining, you're a nuisance, be quiet. Your emotional needs, especially from birth to age 3, were not the primary focus of that primary caregiver. You will then be looking for a man who is dismissive, doesn't put you first, is distracted with himself and other things. It's that correlative and it's that simple, and it requires you with your consciousness now, because you know you want all these qualities, it requires you to override and attempt to be attracted to a man with those qualities by, because this is the key, by giving the love to yourself that you did not get. How do we do that? We do it in a combination of ways. Through our adult relationships, not with love interests as much as with others. This can even be done. Why therapy can be helpful in this respect is it's a reparative experience of unconditional positive regard from another that you sit with face to face, who gives no judgment, unconditional positive regard, and lets you be you. That's very, very helpful, I would say, especially in the early stages in life, early 20s, absolutely. I mean, it can be at any time. However, this is tricky because you want it then to be only for a certain time and not just about spewing out issues, problems, what you don't have, what you needed and didn't get. It's really walking a fine line, because the premise that I work under, which is coaching, what you focus on, you get more of. And there's a case for venting, but it must be very short-lived, and we must move through it to create what we want. And that is through affirmations that we're telling ourselves, putting into ourselves and our subconscious mind from our consciousness what we want our subconscious to feel, that we are respected, we are worthy, we are loved, we are honored. And if you are telling yourself, I am honored, and people honor me, people honor my feelings, I am respected, I am worthy, I am lovable. If any of those don't ring true to you, that means your subconscious is pushing back on that. And that's exactly what you need to be filling yourself with. Because once you fill yourself and you are completely whole in how you feel, completely worthy of love, even with your flaws, and you're working towards this conscientiousness, flexibility, and openness, you can then be more attracted to men who embody these qualities. It's a lot of stuff to be thinking about, but conversations like that are very important. Looking at ourselves first and foremost, because we don't necessarily attract exactly what we want. We attract who we are. So I wanted to give that to you tonight because there's so much out there about the red flags. You know, what to look out for, the red flags. qualities? Well, yes, to some degree. It's not that simple because remember, what we focus on, we get more of. Let's look for these qualities. And that takes a little time to get to know, but you can kind of tell with someone. Think about conscientiousness. That's somebody steady. How's he treating other people in his life? We've all heard. You want to know about a man? Just look, how does he treat his mother? That's actually a pretty good barometer because it encompasses this conscientiousness. Because no matter the childhood he may have had with the mother, if it was a good enough mother, Winnicott's psychological premise of the good enough mother, then he, as a good man, will want to be conscientious towards that mother. So that can be a great barometer right then and there. Talking about family, seeing what, if this person at the end, she talked about always looking for the shiny new object, the next thing, not satisfied. And that's a bit of a miss, the openness. We're going to think, well, openness to adventure. It's more openness instead of being closed off, because life is very difficult for those who close themselves off to new ideas, thoughts, learning, the flexibility. As I said, to me, they're all in line with a certain personality type that we want to look for, not so much looks. And that can be for us as women really, really hard. And that all the stuff on, like I talked about in one of my last videos, looking for somebody over 6 feet, making over 250,000, making over 150,000. And the apps that are out there, you put the 5 things in. And the last video I was talking about, the gal put 5 things that she wanted. And you put, it's really 6 things because sex is in there. Okay. Male or female, race, age, height, and obesity, and finances. So she put in 31 to 45, white, male, who made over 150,000, 6'2", and not obese. And her age then, and I think she was 30, I don't know, I think 34, something like that. And the chances for her with those parameters using this app was to meet that man 0.046%. Shocking, because we think out there, if you look at social media, certainly Hollywood, etc., and all that is in our lexicon about movies, romance novels, everything, it's the knight in shining armor, because that sells. The good-looking, tall, dark, handsome guy who saves the day, has all these qualities, is over 6 feet, and then we add in the money, and I've talked about that here. I'll put the 2 videos that I go more into this, into the statistics. Finding a man over 6 feet, this is in the States, over 6 feet tall, who makes over 250,000 a year. 0.01% of men over 6 feet tall, making over 150 a year. 0.03%. So it's not like saying you can't have either, but you just want to really know your odds. You might be fine giving up on the tall and not fine on giving up the finances. Well, okay, might be the opposite, but everything is about trade-offs. And I like to make the case of, let's find partnership that's fulfilling, potentially lasting. And these 3 qualities, I think, really hit the mark. A protector is going to be conscientious. Someone respectful is going to be conscientious. Somebody happy is usually open and flexible. You see, a leader is going to be conscientious. Now, that doesn't mean someone with leadership qualities is going to be flexible. Maybe not. Doesn't mean a leader is going to be open. No, it could be my way or the highway. Think of our leader here in the United States right now, whatever you think of him, good, bad, or indifferent. But Donald Trump is a leader. Would you say he's flexible? Probably not. Doesn't look like it, correct? Not flexible. Probably not that open. Conscientious? Absolutely. Leaders are conscientious. But then we have to look at those other 2 things. So it's super important. The most important decision anyone ever make in their life is not their career that they go into, their mate choice. Nothing will make or break your life more than your mate choice. So it's super important. I'm really glad that you joined me. If you like this video, I hope you put a like on it, subscribe. And I want to give you this because it's super important to know, like Dr. Curry said, and I've always said, you're only looking for one. And it might be like that pot of gold or the gold vein in the gold mine. You dig and you dig, you don't really know where it is. But if you give up on it and just say, I won't ever find that, well, you could be giving up a few inches away from the gold vein in the mine. That said, there is a case to be made for making sure that when you meet a man with these qualities, even if you're not unduly attracted physically, give it some time. Go on that second date. Go on that third date. Let him show you who he is. Because we as women, we are biologically set up to look at looks, height, shoulder width to waist width. Biologically, we are set up for that. And that has no bearing in the modern world now. So it does us a big disservice. So it's almost like we need to override that. And because studies show that it is never the thing that keeps good, stable, mentally well, healthy people together. These qualities do. And so if you're having trouble, you want to be working with someone to really identify your core programming so that you can be working on it consciously to override it. So you give yourself the most love, you embody those qualities, and you will be attracting them, recognizing them, and feeling more attracted to them. That's the real takeaway today. So thank you for being here. So put comments of topics you would like to see. And again, when this is done, if you have any other comments, come back to it. Put a like on it. That helps the algorithms very much so. And I always want to be here to help you. And I appreciate you helping me in this way. So that said, love you all. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you in the next video.